They sentenced him to death for betraying the Baskerville family, but the truth was far more terrifying. Vikier van Baskerville knew too much. After years of serving the family, killing enemies, fighting demons, and doing every dirty job they demanded, his reward was a guillotine. As his head rested beneath the blade, Vikier made one final vow. If he ever got another chance at life, he would never be a loyal hound again. And then he opened his eyes. But instead of standing before the guillotine, Vikier found himself lying inside a cradle. He had been reborn, not as a warrior, not as a powerful noble, but as a newborn baby in the very family that had betrayed him. Vikier quickly realized that he had regressed to the beginning of his life. He was still a baby, meaning he had no power to take revenge. Yet there was one opportunity he could exploit: the Cradle of Swords. Every child born into the Baskerville family had to survive this brutal trial. They were placed inside a maze surrounded by deadly blades before being forced to reach the legendary Styx River. The river possessed an incredible ability. Its water could strengthen a child's body and turn their flesh into something resembling iron. But there was a catch. The river could only bless a limited number of children. So whoever reached it first had the greatest advantage, and Vikier knew exactly what he needed to do. He had to monopolize the river's blessing. Vikier crawled through the maze, ignoring the cuts covering his tiny body. Pain meant nothing to him. He had already experienced death once. Compared to the guillotine, this was nothing. Eventually, Vikier reached the Styx River and fell into its waters. The moment the water entered his wounds, unimaginable pain spread through his body. His bones felt like they were being crushed. His flesh burned, but Vikier refused to leave. Outside the river, his attendants desperately begged him to come out. Even Hugo watched with interest. Minutes passed, then more minutes. 7 minutes had already gone by. Hugo began to suspect that the child might actually die, but Vikier didn't care. He continued absorbing the river's power. Endure, endure, endure. He would not waste this second chance. Eventually, Vikier could no longer hold his breath. He began sinking. Just before he drowned, Hugo pulled him from the river. Instead of being impressed, Hugo laughed at the infant's greed. But then he noticed something strange. The baby already had teeth, and not ordinary teeth, sharp canines. When Hugo asked for the child's name, the answer was revealed: Vikier van Baskerville. Hugo smiled. He had no idea what kind of monster had just been born into his family. But Vikier's second life was only beginning. One day, a maid entered his room carrying a strange box. She mentioned that Madame had ordered it to be placed beside young Master Vikier. Vikier immediately became suspicious. There were only a few women in the Baskerville family who could be called Madame, and if one of them was already trying to eliminate him. Then his second life had become dangerous even before he could walk. The box opened. 2 bloody vipers emerged. They slithered toward the nursery. One bite could kill a baby. The snakes attacked, but Vikier didn't scream. He didn't run. Instead, he caught both snakes with his bare hands. The next morning, the entire Baskerville family was shocked. The child was sleeping peacefully beside 2 dead vipers. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, but only Vikier knew the truth. And deep inside, his hatred continued to grow. 8 years later, Vikier was sitting in class learning about swordsmanship. The teacher explained the 4 major levels: sword beginner, sword expert, sword grader, and finally, sword master. The strongest swordsman in the Baskerville family was none other than Hugo himself. But while the other children admired Hugo's strength, Vikier had only one thought: how many years until I can kill him? He needed to regain the power he had possessed in his previous life, and he needed to do it before the coming-of-age ceremony. But then, 3 familiar faces appeared: the Baskerville triplets. They mocked Vikier for being a bastard and laughed about the rumors surrounding his childhood. They called him garbage. They laughed about him surviving the Styx River, and then they decided to test another rumor. Apparently, anyone who stayed in the river long enough would develop a body as hard as steel. So one of the triplets grabbed Vikier from behind while another pulled out a knife. They wanted to see how long he could survive. 1 minute passed, then 3, then 10. But they had made one mistake. They thought Vikier was still the helpless child they could bully. They didn't realize that the soul inside that body had already experienced death. When the triplet released him, he noticed something strange. There was blood on his hand, and one of his fingers was missing. Vikier slowly spat the finger out of his mouth. The triplet froze in horror. Vikier smiled. He reminded him of his promise. You said you'd eat your own hand if I lasted 3 minutes. The triplets tried to attack him again, but this time Vikir fought back. A knife was driven toward his body. Vikir didn't even dodge. The blade struck him and broke against his skin. The triplets stared in disbelief. Vikir grabbed the attacker and twisted his arm. Then he reminded them of one simple rule of the Baskerville family. Age doesn't matter. Power does. And Vikir had plenty of it. Within moments, the triplets were lying on the floor, broken, terrified, defeated. But Vikir wasn't finished. Instead of simply killing them, he decided to make them destroy themselves. He placed a knife between them. Then he told them that only one of them would be allowed to leave. They would have to decide who. Vikir walked away. Behind him, the triplets stared at the knife, then at each other. Fear turned into desperation, and desperation turned into violence. Soon, the three brothers were fighting each other for survival. Vikir stood outside and listened. A cold smile appeared on his face. Subscribe to see which of the triplets survive.